Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, how are my snipers doing today? Hope you're doing fantastic. Listen, this video is not going to apply for probably 90 to 95% of you. Most of you guys are fantastic, and most of you guys probably see yourself as students, which is why you watch videos. It is why you do research. But this is to the rest of people that are ignorant, don't put in the time and research, and simply comment before even actually finishing a video or before doing any research, right? Look, I noticed throughout the years, just in general, in life, people have an ego about everything. They think they're an expert on business and finance and health and relationships and this and that and that and this. But the reality is, you're not, okay? These people are not. There's a reason why, they are where they are in life, respectfully. And look, it's always easy to criticize somebody. It's always easy to be like, oh, yeah, well, you should have done this. You should have done that. Look, anybody can do that. OK, hindsight is easy. Judging is easy. But what's not easy is actually perfecting what you're good at. And you know what? Even common sense and self-awareness is very, very lack nowadays, right? Yesterday, I made a video talking about how I expected the markets to be going down. We talked about how the daily candle closes are looking. We talked about how the 4-hour chart, right, it's printing lower highs, and I expected a drop at least to the CME gap to be filled, right? And that is exactly what happened. And yet, some people are surprised that that happened. It doesn't make sense to me, right? I know most of you have a brain and ears, but to the people that don't, you really got to drop your ego and actually start paying attention to videos, because you will lose money in these markets, okay? You will, because these are the same type of people that think everything can just pump so quickly. They think any coin can just, 10, 20, 50, 100x. They don't understand simple concepts. And look, I understand there's a lot to learn in these markets. There truly is, right? From, even just following news to technical analysis, and actually becoming good and very consistent at technical analysis. And I would just say, I am not perfect. I am not perfect when it comes to technical analysis. I take losses. My bias sometimes changes, right? We have a bias, we get more data, bias changes. I mean, that's perfectly normal. Sometimes I'm wrong. Most of the time I am right with something. Why I literally trade for a living. We also have to find out about what this coin does, all these coins that come up, keeping up with the coins. And then, there's so much more. So I get it. There's a lot. But the difference is, for example, like someone like me, I still see myself as a student. Now, that may surprise some of you, but that is how it is. Because the thing is, the markets are always going to evolve. Technical analysis is going to always evolve. There's always going to be something new. And the problem is with a lot of people is they think they know it all, and they think, everything can just happen overnight. In terms of the cycle, for example, like we are on track, right? We are on track. We are still on track. There's been pullbacks, sure. Corrections, sure. But that is just all part of the process. You cannot expect things to just pump so quick, because the thing is, there's a lot of money involved, right? This isn't your typical pump and dump scenario where you kind of have it sideways, go up, 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 and then a crash like this, right? I'm sure we've seen some type of markets or coins or meme coins that have done something very similar. They kind of go sideways, they pump, they drop hard, then they kind of sell off quickly, and then just go sideways, flatline, right? Those days are over, right? Especially when we're talking about big coins. So, yesterday we talked about how there's an expected drop to be happening. That is exactly what happened. And still, yet some people are crying, which doesn't make any sense, okay? It doesn't make any sense. Anyways, I just had to get that out the way, because the thing is, right, you got to realize in these markets, you're never going to win with ego. You're never going to, you can't rush the process. You just simply cannot be thinking that you're that person that is him, right? You cannot be, listening to a video for 30 seconds or a minute and then, leave an ignorant comment, think you're in the right. That doesn't make you right. That makes you a dumbass, all right? That's just how it is. Personally, these comments do not affect me, because I don't care personally if you would blow your account today or if you would become a multimillionaire overnight. Like, it does not affect my life at all, okay? And like I said, 90 to 95% or even more of you are fantastic. But to the people that are brain dead, this is just a warning that, hey, you should really try to develop a brain over the next, little while, because these next few months are going to be absolutely crucial for you, your portfolio, and the markets. So, anyways, right? Anyways, now that that's out the way, let's quickly see and update you on what is happening in the market. So yesterday we talked about how we were believing that things were going to go down. The technical analysis was showing it, right? When we go even take out the wick, we can see we were creating consistent lower highs on the 4-hour. We had a high, then we had pretty much a double top, lower, lower, and then we can see we kind of just crashed out of this zone and we went all the way down. We filled the gap, right? So right now, at this current moment, we have filled the gap, and you can see right away, we are starting to already consolidate, right? We're starting to go sideways. Now, does that necessarily mean this is going to be necessarily the big reversal right away? No, doesn't necessarily mean that, right? Because we did talk about there's a one possibility where off of this zone, right, off of this gap getting filled, we could very well see a retracement to the upside, right? Continuation. Or we will actually start seeing generally a bigger pullback, maybe down even to the 80K zone before we then actually go up, right? Because the thing is, ladies and gentlemen, when we look at something like Bitcoin, we can see that the general range for us that is super, super relevant, I would say is pretty much 80K, right? Because we have some support over here. We pretty much have like a reverse head and shoulders here, good structure. And then I'd say the next, really relevant zone is, let's just say roughly, 87,000, right? You could argue a little bit higher, but it doesn't really matter. But generally, this is the zone we're kind of ranging in. And, there is some liquidity to be swept, right? We had a gap that we had to fill, which we filled. And then there's also some points of liquidity where I could see this Bitcoin going back down. We also talked about the hourly, order block, that if it were to go snipe down, I don't believe we should be going lower back into the mid 70s or low 70s anymore. Obviously, we'll have to see how everything goes. The weekly candle does look, pretty weak. We also got to remember that the monthly and the 3-month candle and the weekly candle are all coming to end at the same time, right? The weekly candle is about to close, which means also the March candle is about to close, which also means the quarterly candle is about to close. So I expect things to look pretty solid, right? I do believe, generally speaking, that this 3-month candle is the candle that is more of a retest. We could see April always have a little bit of a pullback, but generally, April, May, June are going to be the recovery candles. And I definitely do believe that July, August, September will 100% be another expansion. That is what I predict personally. That is what I personally predict. It could happen even faster to the point where, May, June can already start expanding, but we'll have to see for that, ladies and gentlemen. But that is it, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you guys did enjoy. Remember, being egotistical, ignorant, or just straight up, dumb, right? Respectfully, or thinking you know everything in life, it never gets you anywhere. I don't even see myself as a master. I still see myself as a student. I'm still, adjusting on my mistakes, learning more and more each and every single day. And I know a lot of you, respectfully, you don't even have, close to knowledge that I have, which is okay. That is okay. Not everyone needs to be, in these markets, hours a day, right? Everyone has their own career, their own path, life, but the point is, you shouldn't ever stop learning. You should always listen to videos in full, and you should honestly, try to be humble, because these markets are ruthless. Life is ruthless, and life can humble you very, very quickly. So yeah, that is it, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Goodbye.